Imagine you find yourself standing in a dimly lit gallery, the hum of curious whispers swirling around you. The atmosphere is heavy, filled with both anticipation and a strange tension that you can't quite put your finger on. Ahead, in the center of the room, is a woman seated on a simple wooden chair. Her posture is calm, still, yet her presence is magnetic, pulling you toward her like gravity. Visitors sit across from her one by one, staring into her eyes in complete silence. Some break down in tears, others sit motionless, locked in an intense exchange of presence. This is Marina Abramovic, the woman who, without a word, can turn silence into an emotional earthquake. You inch forward, drawn in by the collective energy of the room. What is it about her? What is it about the way she simply exists in this space that makes people so vulnerable, so raw? You glance at the placard on the wall. The artist is present. That's when it hits you. Abramovic's work isn't just performance, it's a deep, spiritual conversation with the audience, with the universe, and with herself. You see, Marina Abramovic has spent her life pushing the boundaries of not only art but the human experience itself. Her journey, from the early years of radical, often painful, performance pieces to her later, more meditative explorations of presence and spirituality, has been one of intense transformation. But the key to unlocking the deeper layers of her work lies in something unexpected: Buddhism and meditation. Yes, beneath the physical extremes of her performances lies a profound spiritual practice, one that centers on mindfulness, suffering, and the dissolution of the ego. How did she get here? How did a woman who began her career testing the limits of physical endurance evolve into an artist whose stillness carries the weight of an entire room's emotions? That's what we're about to uncover, a journey not only through the life of Marina Abramovic but through her transformation from an artist who explored pain to one who has found profound meaning in silence, presence, and spiritual transcendence. Marina Abramovic, a life of endurance, meditation, and Buddhist philosophy. Marina Abramovic. Just the name alone evokes powerful images of human endurance, vulnerability, and the raw exploration of the human spirit. Often hailed as the grandmother of performance art, Abramovic's work has not just influenced contemporary art, it has redefined it, challenging what we think of as art, body, mind, and the intersection of spirituality. Born in 1946 in Belgrade, Serbia, her artistic career spans over 4 decades, and through that time, her body has become both her medium and her message. But it isn't only the physical aspects of her performances that captivate us, it's her profound engagement with spirituality. Particularly her exploration of Buddhist philosophy and meditation, that takes her work to the metaphysical realm. Doesn't that just make you want to dive right into her world? To understand Abramovic's work is to embark on a journey through her life, her pains, her challenges, and ultimately, her quest for spiritual understanding. And it's a journey worth taking. From the shocking and intense explorations of bodily endurance in her early career to the quiet, still presence of her later work inspired by Buddhism, Abramovic has continually pushed the boundaries of what the human body and spirit can endure. But how does one get from physical pain to spiritual transcendence? That's exactly what we're here to explore. The early years, pain, endurance, and the quest for limits. Abramovic's early career is like a storm, a fierce whirlwind of energy, pain, and confrontation. In the 1970s, she emerged as a groundbreaking artist, using her body in ways that no one had ever dared before. If you had witnessed her early performances, you might have gasped or even felt your own body tense up in reaction. Imagine the intensity. Her work wasn't just performance, it was a raw challenge to our understanding of vulnerability, trust, and, ultimately, cruelty. One of the most famous of these early performances is Rhythm Zero, 1974. Can you picture this? Abramovic, standing still for 6 hours, surrounded by 72 objects that the audience could use on her as they pleased. These objects ranged from harmless items like feathers to potentially lethal ones, including a loaded gun. She didn't move. She didn't resist. It's impossible not to feel a surge of anxiety just thinking about it, right? The performance started out gentle, with audience members interacting cautiously, but slowly, the crowd's behavior grew more violent. At one point, someone even held the loaded gun to her head. What must it have felt like for her, standing there, trusting the audience not to end her life? This wasn't just performance art, it was a radical experiment in human nature, a confrontation with the darker sides of empathy and cruelty. And then there's Rhythm 5, 1974. This one was just as intense. Abramović lay inside a burning wooden star, symbolically tied to her Yugoslav heritage, and remained still until she passed out from the lack of oxygen. If you're gasping, I don't blame you. Can you imagine pushing yourself to that limit, where you'd risk your life to make a statement? She was always testing the limits of endurance, of both the body and the mind, but these performances weren't just about physical pain. Abramović was digging into something much deeper. By surrendering control over her body to the audience, or to the elements, she explored the delicate boundaries between life and death, safety and danger, control and surrender. She wasn't just testing her body's endurance. She was pushing the psychological and emotional boundaries of vulnerability and trust. And in doing so, she forced her audience to confront their own discomfort, their own capacity for empathy, or cruelty. How far would you go if you were in the audience? It's a haunting question, isn't it? While these early works weren't directly linked to any formal spiritual practice, they certainly laid the foundation for Abramović's later explorations of suffering and endurance through a Buddhist lens. Buddhism teaches that suffering, dukkha, is inherent in life, and to transcend it, we must confront it head-on. Even in these early performances, Abramović was grappling with the nature of suffering. Using her body as a medium to understand and transcend pain, turning toward the spiritual, Abramović and Buddhist meditation, the 1990s marked a significant turning point for Abramović. After years of exploring extreme physical endurance and vulnerability, she began to look inward, seeking not just physical endurance but spiritual resilience. And that's when she discovered Buddhist meditation. Can you imagine what that must have been like for her? To go from such intense physicality to the quiet, still practice of meditation, Abramović started traveling extensively during this time, visiting Buddhist monasteries in Nepal, India, and Thailand, immersing herself in the teachings of mindfulness, presence, and the dissolution of the ego. These experiences transformed not only her life but also her art. Meditation wasn't just a way for her to cope with personal and professional challenges, it became a tool for artistic creation, a way to deepen her exploration of endurance and presence. Through Buddhism, Abramović found a framework for understanding the same themes she had been exploring throughout her career: suffering, transformation, the limits of the body and mind, but now with a more spiritual dimension. In interviews, Abramović has spoken about the profound impact that Buddhist meditation has had on her life. She learned the importance of stillness, silence, and presence. What a radical shift from her early performances, where her body was always in motion, always pushing the limits. Can you imagine going from cutting your body or lying in fire to sitting in stillness for hours, focusing on nothing but the breath? That's the kind of transformation that meditation brought to Abramović's life and art. Buddhist meditation taught her that true endurance isn't about pushing the body to its physical limits, it's about mastering the mind, staying present in the moment, and dissolving the ego. In Buddhism, the self is seen as an illusion, and our attachment to it is the source of much suffering. For Abramović, the dissolution of the ego became a central theme in her work. Particularly in her later performances where she relinquished control over her body or subjected herself to extreme vulnerability in entirely new ways. The influence of Buddhism on Abramović's performances. Buddhist philosophy emphasizes the transient nature of life, the inevitability of suffering, and the possibility of enlightenment through mindfulness and letting go of the ego. These teachings have deeply influenced Abramović's later performances, where themes of presence, impermanence, and the mind-body connection take center stage. It's incredible to think about how these ancient spiritual practices found their way into the world of avant-garde performance art, isn't it? Take her performance The Artist is Present, 2010. For example, this performance is a masterpiece of presence and mindfulness. Over the course of 3 months, Abramović sat in silence for 7 hours a day at New York's Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, inviting visitors to sit across from her in a wordless, motionless exchange. Sounds simple, right? But it was anything but. The emotional intensity of those silent interactions was extraordinary. Some people wept, others simply gazed into her eyes, overwhelmed by the shared presence. Abramović was fully present with each person, practicing a form of living meditation where stillness and silence created a profound connection between artist and audience. Would you have sat across from her? And if you had, what do you think you would have felt? This performance required immense mental discipline. Abramović had to remain present, fully engaged, and aware for hours on end. The practice of Buddhist meditation, where one focuses on the breath or a single point of attention, was integral to her ability to stay so focused and connected. Through her stillness, she invited the audience to join her in the present moment, creating a shared meditative space where ego and external distractions fell away. Isn't it remarkable that something as simple as sitting and making eye contact can be so transformative? Another performance that reflects Abramović's engagement with Buddhist principles is The House with the Ocean View, 2002. In this performance, she lived in silence for 12 days in a small installation at the Sean Kelly Gallery in New York, refraining from speaking, eating, or interacting with the outside world. During this time, she created a space of meditation and mindfulness, where the passage of time and the impermanence of life became central themes. Does this remind you of a Buddhist monk's ascetic retreat into silence and solitude? Abramović was, in a sense, performing a modern-day version of the ancient practice of seclusion, where monks withdraw from the world to gain spiritual insight. For Abramović, this was as much a personal spiritual journey as it was a public performance. These later performances represent a shift in Abramović's focus, from extreme physical endurance to mental and spiritual endurance. And it's here that we really begin to see the influence of Buddhism on her work. Buddhist meditation isn't just about sitting in silence, it's about training the mind to be fully present, to let go of attachment to thoughts, emotions, and the self. Abramović's performances, especially The Artist is Present, embody this principle. She trained her mind to be still, to stay in the present moment, and to connect with others on a deep, almost spiritual level. In many ways, her performances are a form of active meditation, where the boundaries between the self and the other, the performer and the audience, begin to dissolve. Isn't that a beautiful reflection of Buddhist teachings on interconnectedness, suffering in Abramović's work? A Buddhist perspective, suffering is a central theme in both Abramović's work and Buddhist philosophy. In Buddhism, suffering is seen as an inherent part of the human condition. To live is to suffer, but it is through understanding and transcending this suffering that we can achieve enlightenment. Abramović's performances, particularly her early works, often involve intense physical and emotional suffering. But these performances aren't just about shock or spectacle, they're about confronting the nature of suffering and using it as a tool for self-discovery and transformation. In works like Rhythm Zero and Lips of Thomas, 1975, Abramović subjected herself to extreme physical pain. In Lips of Thomas, for instance, she inflicted wounds upon herself, carving a star into her stomach and lying on a block of ice. Can you imagine the level of pain she must have endured? It's agonizing just to think about. But for Abramović, this wasn't about self-harm, it was about using her body as a vehicle to explore the limits of suffering and endurance. In Buddhism, suffering is often seen as the result of attachment to the ego and the desire for things to be different from what they are. By surrendering herself to pain and suffering, Abramović was, in a way, letting go of her ego, accepting the present moment no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be. In Rhythm Zero, Abramović allowed the audience to use dangerous objects on her body, knowing that she could be harmed but accepting that risk as part of the performance. From a Buddhist perspective, this act of surrender can be seen as an attempt to let go of the ego, to confront suffering without resistance, and to accept the present moment as it is. It's a radical practice, both in art and in life. Would you have the courage to do something like that? Buddhist teachings remind us that suffering is not something to be avoided, but something to be understood and transcended. Abramovich's performances often mirror this journey. Through suffering, she reaches a deeper understanding of herself and the human condition. And in doing so, she invites her audience to reflect on their own experiences of pain, vulnerability, and resilience. What do you think? Can suffering be transformative? The dissolution of boundaries, artist, audience, and the self, one of the most profound ways in which Buddhist philosophy has influenced Abramovich's work is through the dissolution of boundaries, particularly the boundaries between the self and the other, the artist and the audience. In many of her performances, Abramovich creates a space where these boundaries begin to blur, allowing for a deeper connection between the performer and the viewer. In The Artist is Present, the boundary between Abramovich and the audience dissolves as she engages in silent eye contact with each participant. The performance becomes a shared experience, where both the artist and the viewer are fully present with one another, free from the distractions of words or external stimuli. This dissolution of boundaries is central to Buddhist philosophy, where the ego is seen as a construct that creates a false sense of separation between the self and the world. By letting go of the ego and engaging fully with the present moment, both the artist and the viewer can experience a deeper sense of connection and unity. Abramovich's willingness to place herself in vulnerable situations, where she has no control over what happens to her body, also reflects this dissolution of boundaries. In Rhythm Zero, for example, the boundary between the artist and the audience is broken down, as the audience is given the power to control what happens to Abramovich's body. The performance becomes a shared experience, where the actions of the audience directly impact the artist, and the line between the performer and the observer becomes blurred. The legacy of Abramovich's work, Art as a Path to Enlightenment. Marina Abramovich's engagement with Buddhist philosophy and meditation has had a profound impact on her work, shaping both the content and the form of her performances. Through her exploration of suffering, endurance, presence, and the dissolution of the ego, Abramovich has created a body of work that challenges not only the physical limits of the human body but also the boundaries of the human mind and spirit. In many ways, Abramovich's art can be seen as a form of spiritual practice, where the act of performing becomes a path to greater awareness and self-understanding. Through her willingness to confront suffering, let go of the ego, and engage fully with the present moment, Abramovich has demonstrated that art can be a powerful tool for spiritual exploration and transformation. Her work has left an indelible mark on the world of performance art, not only for its physical intensity but also for its deep philosophical and spiritual dimensions. By integrating Buddhist principles into her art, Abramovich has opened up new possibilities for what performance art can achieve, turning it into a medium for exploring some of the most fundamental questions of human existence. What is the nature of suffering? How can we transcend it? And how can we cultivate a deeper sense of presence and connection in our lives? Through her performances, Abramovich invites both herself and her audience to engage with these questions, offering a space for reflection, transformation, and the possibility of enlightenment. Her work is not just a form of entertainment or aesthetic expression but a path to greater awareness, mindfulness, and spiritual growth. And isn't that the true essence of art? As you finally gather the courage to take a seat across from Marina Abramovich, you feel an unexpected wave of emotion wash over you. The space between you seems to stretch, filled with the silence of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. You lock eyes with her, and in that moment, everything else fades away. There's no noise, no distraction, just the deep, steady connection between you and this woman who has spent her life exploring the edges of human endurance, vulnerability, and spirit. You begin to feel something that words can't quite describe, an odd mixture of calm and intensity, as though she's looking not just at you but through you, to something deeper. What had felt like a simple act of sitting across from an artist now feels like a moment of introspection. You start to question things. Why are you here? What do you carry in your heart that is unspoken, unseen, but weighing heavy on your soul? And then it clicks. Abramovich's art is not about the physical acts, the pain, or even the endurance. It's about presence. About being fully here, fully alive in this fleeting moment. It's about confronting the suffering, fear, and attachments that we all carry and learning to let them go. You realize that this is what she has been teaching all along, from her early, painful performances to this quiet, meditative moment. Her work is a mirror, reflecting back at us the depths of our own experiences, our own suffering, and our own capacity for transformation. As you continue to sit with her, you feel your breath slow, your mind quiet. In her gaze, you find not judgment but acceptance, an invitation to simply be. And that's when you understand, Abramovich's art is more than performance. It's a path, a journey through suffering and vulnerability, toward enlightenment and presence. It's not just her story, but a universal one, shared by every person who has ever sat in that chair and every person who has ever struggled to find meaning in their own lives. When your time is up, you stand and slowly walk away. The room feels different now, quieter, softer, as if the weight you carried in with you has somehow been lightened. You look back at Marina Abramović. Still sitting, still present, and you feel a deep sense of gratitude. Not for the performance, but for the experience, for the reminder that, in the end, life is about connection, presence, and the courage to confront ourselves. And as you step outside the gallery, into the noise and rush of the world once again, you realize that you are changed. Abramovich's journey, her exploration of art, suffering, and spirituality, has now become a part of your own story.